I'm honored to be standing here today with Congressman Al Green and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, uh, County Commissioner Adrian Garcia, Precinct 2, City Council members Carlos Cisneros and Robert Gallegos, um, Judson Robinson of the Houston area Urban League, and then a number, Larry Payne, who has educated himself and has worked with the city and other mayors over the years, has a long history of being heavily involved in education. Um, we have representatives from the Houston Baptist Ministers, Ministers Against Crime, partnership ministers from the Partnerships of Schools, from the Houston Metropolitan Ministers as well, and pastors and ministers covering a number of churches that are here. Quite frankly, about 36 of them who are present, and appreciate them, and you'll be hearing from some of them as we move forward. This press conference is in reference to the closing of schools in HISD by the current superintendent and the board of managers. All of you know how I feel about the closing of schools, closing of libraries as it relates to HISD. But even before I get started, the superintendent, of course, is aware of this press conference, and I see he has already issued his statement, which I'm going to read. And he says, I'm aware of Mayor Turner's planned press event. I cannot have a school district by press or press release. The time for politics is over, and we will not be distracted by intentional misinformation. I will work with anyone who is serious about improving the learning and life outcomes of HISD students. I have extended an invitation to the mayor to come see these schools in action and to learn more about the NES model, which is designed to provide the most support to Houston's most disadvantaged children. And I extend the same invitation to other elected officials and community leaders so they can see what construction can make for our kids. Well, let me just say before I go to my prepared remarks, I am serious about the learning and life outcomes of HISD students. And I've been serious before this superintendent ever stepped on Houston's grounds. I've committed most of my professional life in improving the quality of education and the quality of life for students, not just in HISD, but no one taken in this city as if you are the general and we are less than your soldiers. That will not work, Superintendent. Also pleased to have City Councilwoman Carolyn Evans Shabazz. Invited more than 36 prominent Houston faith leaders to stand united on this important issue, protecting our children and preventing some of our schools from being dismantled as one of the state's takeover. For the past several weeks, ever since the state replaced the superintendent and elected board of trustees with an appointed board of managers and an appointed superintendent, we have watched the removal, resignations, and reassignment of key personnel within HISD. Simply put, a significant overhaul very from parents and community. We are only weeks away from the start of school, and there are changes in curriculum, a shortage of certified teachers that is forcing the school district to hire hundreds of substitute teachers. Each step has created concern for parents, teachers, and staff, which ultimately affects the students themselves. We can all agree that grades and academic achievement must improve at all of our schools, and there are students who need remedial help to improve their reading, their writing, to assist any person, superintendent, board of managers, teachers, anyone else, to improve the quality of education in all our schools. But you cannot do that by closing libraries on some campuses and converting them into disciplinary centers. That you cannot do. And we are in 2023. We are not in 1953, but 2023. This sends the wrong message. I've always been a strong proponent of libraries, especially in schools and neighborhoods where children are challenged for a number of reasons: poverty, unemployment, there may be all kinds of issues, lack of transportation, lack of resources at home, not connected to the Wi-Fi, or don't have the technology of all of those devices. Those are reasons why we should make sure that our schools are stronger and better. When you close libraries, you deprive all students of resources they need to learn and achieve. Now, I understand that the superintendent and the board of managers have decided that we are going to take this library space and use it for disciplinary centers for kids that have been unruly in the classrooms. But the problem with that model is that when you reassign libraries in these schools and you turn the library space into these disciplinary spaces, you don't just affect those kids who have acted up in the classroom. You are depriving all of those students access to the library. What about those 99% of the students who have not acted up? What about the 99% of the students who are following the teacher's instructions, being respectful? And what about the 99% of those students who might want to go to the library or research something? When you shut off the library without librarians, you're not just providing space to those kids who are unruly. You are denying functional space to every student at that school. And what is the message that you're sending to those students? What's the message that you're sending? And then what happens when those students go a few miles down the street? And Commissioner Garcia, they go to another school with a fully functional library. Librarians, books, technology. They have all the things that they need for themselves. But when you come to these schools, their services, their facilities are far less. Now, if people can't see the disparity in that, if they can't see the disparity in that, something's missing. And how can you teach these kids if you don't see the disparity in what you are doing? And why would you expect a city or a community to stand quiet when we see that disparity? Would the superintendent prefer that we not say anything? Would the superintendent prefer that we just rubber stamp this discrepancy? And then what do we say to our children? What do we say to them? That it's okay? Yet the superintendent told me to mind my own business. When I became mayor, I said I did not want to be the mayor of two cities in one, of have and have not. That's what I said 8 years ago. I am standing firmly on that today. I will not be the mayor of two cities in one. And I will not be the mayor where we are creating two different systems in the same school district. HISD is creating a school district of the haves and have-nots, with some areas of the district equipped with libraries full of books and technology, while others will resemble a stark institution with no place for the students to go to their school library to study, check out a book, get the assistance of a librarian, and expand their own imagination by exploring treasured authors in history. You cannot have a system where you are closing libraries for some schools in certain neighborhoods, while more affluent neighborhood schools have libraries that are open and stocked with books and other resources. Now, let me just say this. I understand that teachers don't want unruly kids in their classrooms. I got that. I don't want unruly kids in the classrooms. But the answer is not to close their libraries. The answer is not to reassign the librarians. Now, if you need more space, go and put them in the gym. If you want to use the gym space, okay. But don't close the libraries. That sends the wrong message. Yes, some students are struggling and need additional support and attention. But the answer isn't throwing out libraries so that no student in that school can have access to a campus library, especially not in neighborhoods where libraries are needed the most. You don't close the library, remove the librarians, and simply have the books on the shelf. Under former Superintendent Millard House, HISD was putting a librarian at every school through a 5-year plan. If HISD reverses course and removes librarians and closes libraries now, some students may never develop a love and appreciation for reading. And we do not want our schools to look like prisons. Last week, I invited Superintendent Miles to City Hall to explain his plans for the state's largest school district. That offer still remains. In the meantime, he cannot expect us to remain silent. These are our children. These are our kids. These are our schools. This is our city. And long after he is gone, we will still be here. We are invested in their futures, and we do not want anyone sending the message to them that they deserve to have a library at their schools. And lastly, I'll say this morning through my Department of Education and Youth Engagement. We celebrated our summer interns. The goal this year, Congressman Green, was to have 20,000 paid interns in the city of Houston, the largest this city has ever seen. Well, we exceeded our goal. More than 20,000. These are our children. and we are investing in our kids. I'll close with this. Arthur Ashe, who in 1975 became the first black man to win Wimbledon, said, throughout my formal education, I spent many hours in public and school libraries. Libraries became courts of last resort, as it were. The current definitive answer to almost any question can be found within the four walls of most libraries, unquote. If he were alive today, he would want that same access for all of our children. But if HISD closes campus libraries, some children may not even have a chance to read about Arthur Ashe. Let me yield first to Congressman Al Green, then followed by Congressman Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I trust that you will allow me to acknowledge the presence of Reverend F.N. Williams. He is the sage that has been with us through much of this, and I know that Pastor Max Miller will understand that I did this. And Mayor, I want to thank you. I say it sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, for what you're doing to protect our children. I thank you. And I want to thank my colleague Jackson Lee for her efforts to do what she can through her good offices to do a similar thing. Would you show her just a little love for me as well? And Commissioner Garcia and my partner against crime, the councilwoman, give her a hand for me. I'm sorry, Mayor, I had to do it. Now, I promise I'm going to be as brief as I can, but Mayor, you inspired me to say things that I hadn't thought of. Mayor, I agree with what you have said, and I would simply add this. The governor of this state is where this buck stops. This governor intends to not only, it seems to me, close some schools, but it seems to me that he wants to change the entire system. There is a desire to have vouchers given to parents so that they can take their children out of public schools. Less than 69 years ago, the Supreme Court held that the schools should be desegregated. The Brown versus the Board of Education decision. Less than 70 years ago, we had Brown. Less than 70 years ago. Now, here's what's important about this. The next year, Milton Friedman, a well-known conservative, proposed what the governor is proposing now, to keep schools segregated. That's what Friedman did, to keep the schools segregated. He proposed giving vouchers. When the law said you have to desegregate these schools, he said, well, rather than desegregate, we'll give all parents vouchers, let them take their children to the school of choice. School choice. From that moment to this one, there has not been an effort in earnest to integrate the schools in this country. There have been all sorts of plans to bring children together one way or another, but they haven't really put the effort forth necessary so that all children could get a quality education, not some schools better than other schools, all schools being quality schools so that all children could get a good quality education. That just has not been the case in this country. And my fear is this: if this governor has his way, we will find that we have vouchers in this state, that children are going to be taken out of public schools, and that we will find ourselves moving toward the resegregation of society. I think that's where we're headed, to the resegregation of society. I lived through segregation. There may be one or two of you here who lived through it as well. Anybody here had to go to the back door? Raise your hand if you had to go to a back door. There's another, okay. Anybody here had to drink from a colored water fountain? Colored water fountain? Colored water fountain, anybody? I'm the only person. All right, I drink from colored water fountains. I'm a son of the segregated South. I know what it's like to have to sit in the balcony of the movie in the back of the bus. I don't want to go back to that. So this is why I'm here today to say I support what this mayor is doing. He is taking the necessary steps to deal with this incremental step that is going to take us backwards. We've got to stop it here. The mayor, I saw your video, Mayor, when you said they've crossed the line. They've gone too far. He is right. We've got to stop it here. If we lose the libraries, what's next? If he can take the libraries and turn them into detention centers, what is wrong with this man? Libraries should never, under any circumstance, become detention centers. Governor, you have gone too far. The mayor has said it, and I'm agreeing with him. Governor, we can't let you do this. These people standing here understand the importance of education. And I'm going to close with this, Governor. If you do this, you may get away with it temporarily, but you won't get away with it in the long run. And this is not a threat to do something to you personally, but it is a promise that we are going to have to register, and we're going to have to change the politics of the state of Texas. We cannot stand for what's happening in this state. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Congresswoman?
Thank you very much, Congressman Green. It should be known how tied in unity the members of Congress, like Congressman Al Green and several of my other colleagues who are not able to attend here for other responsibilities, are as representatives of the United States government and the agencies that are responsible for education are together. Let me take a moment to, in essence, say to Houston, you are absolutely more than fortunate to have an education mayor. I want everybody to give a rousing applause. I can't hear you. An education mayor. And I think mayors around the nation will defend his concern, his leadership, his passion. And for those that don't know, cities like Chicago, the mayor is in charge of education. And the mayor is voted upon by the entire city. And so let me first of all indicate, with grandchildren in HISD, with children who have graduated from HISD, I believe in the excellence of education. I can't look and see anyone that is around, and let me mind my manners to honor the iconic F.M. Williams, moderator in my book of all levels of religious leadership. We thank you so very much. And certainly all the moderators are here, but certainly President Reverend Dr. Miller, and each and every activist that is here that is concerned about education and has always been with us, not behind us, but alongside of us and leading us. And Adrian Garcia, who has given his history of education many times, of how grateful he is to the education he got here in Houston, Texas. And as I mentioned Councilmember Carolyn Evans-Shabazz, I will mention Jackie Bostic, whose grandfather, Jack Yates, is the school that was named after him that Carolyn Evans-Shabazz went to and has always promoted excellence among public schools. So let us be very clear. Everyone standing here is not against excellence in education. I stand here for the parents and teachers, support staff, bus drivers, librarians, music teachers, administrative workers of deep, long commitment to education, and most of all, number one, children at all levels of the spectrum whose eyes may be opened if they get into a library and touch a book. I want to salute your Director of Education, Ms. Janice Koski. I hope I almost have it right, but the main point of it is they have just been honored by the U.S. Department of Education for the work that they're doing in the city of Houston. I need to make that clear. The U.S. Department of Education did not send a letter to the mayor and said, mind your business. Stay out of helping young people be exposed. They sent them an absolute pronouncement and affirmation of excellence. So I want to just take a moment, as my colleague did, one, to put on the books, we are supportive of excellence in education. But let me speak specifically to the framework that has been designed by the present superintendent. Mike Morantz, you need to tell your superintendent, if you have to call the governor, you have to tell him to meet with community leaders. Mayor, I called him from Washington. I've yet to get a return call. My understanding is that he's picking and choosing those elected officials that he speaks with. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Because we represent millions of parents and teachers and children in HISD. Unacceptable. So Mike Morantz, you need to return the call, and you need to direct your appointed superintendent, appointed, not elected, has no obligation, and if you all will look at my earlier quotes, I specifically focus on that there is no duty, no representation, no responsibility to any parent or any student. If you're not elected, you have no earthly reason to care one iota. And I will say this, myself, it didn't come to me, a mayor in the history of this city has never received a statement like that from any superintendent of any school district. I will put my little finger on it right now and say, please, if there's any news item, there has never been a statement being sent out by any superintendent, good, disgruntled, I don't view any of them disgruntled, I work with all of them, who are taking care of children when a city mayor of the fourth largest city in the nation, or anyone else, congressman, congresswoman, or anyone else, commissioner, has tried to reach them. Have you seen this? No. I have not got a phone call back. And have you seen any from any superintendent ever? No. So that's breaking news right now. That's breaking news. I feel hurt. So let me just get to the point. Over the years, 5 years, with my colleagues, we have pressed the Department of Education, Department of Justice to know that this is wrong-headed. Even with the state legislation, which some of you are thinking of, there is a flexibility that, as has been said, the state government could have yielded. In particular, I wrote to them during the pandemic to ask them to waive, and with the leadership of the superintendents we had at that time, Grantham and House, we were able to get a stay of the test during the pandemic. But here we are now in a moment when we are addressing the question of the issue of our students. This book is full of letters. Full of letters. This one in particular is going to the Department of Education, the Assistant Secretary of Civil Rights, and the President of the United States. They will have to act. Now they will have to act. With members of Congress, specifically I got that did not live here, only to say that across the nation, people are shocked about the takeover. They're literally shocked. They wanted to put their name down. They're not in Houston to be able to say this is an outrage. So now we are seeing the very example of what we tried to prevent. So let me just conclude my remarks by saying this. I believe in education. This is not a crime reduction program. teachers who have children that need time out, for any of us who are the products of public school education, we went to something like the auditorium, and they had an auditorium teacher or monitor or whatever it is for those who were needing of time out. That's what we call it. Something is happening. We don't know what happened at home with that child, particularly if you're in this corridor, allegedly, of children that need extra help. And the mayor is right. In that population are stars, are academic geniuses, but they're in that corridor. And we want all children to have an opportunity. But look what you're doing. Why not the auditorium? Why not the gym? Why not an empty classroom? The symbolic statement is like when I had to ride in the back of the train traveling to visit my grandmother. Not metro, the train on the big tracks. I was treated unequally. I was treated in a discriminatory manner. I lived in a segregated atmosphere that I had to go in the back of the train or in the train car for coloreds, as we were called, with my bag of fried chicken so that I'd have something to eat as I traveled. And someone will take this and they'll make a meme and they'll make a text and they'll make a tweet. But sometimes honesty is not shamed by people who have ill will. And so when you put these children, it is not a crime reduction program. I want the parents to understand. I want you to understand if you live in River Oaks, if you live in West Side, if you live in the Northwest Side, if you live way out Northwest, of East and West, please take this not as an issue that is only those individuals. This is the mayor of the entire city of Houston. It is to say that if you do it for one, you will do it for others. And so the eliminating of the libraries are a direct hit on Brown versus Board of Education, which in 1954 decided to integrate our schools. It is a violation, I believe, of the 1964 Civil Rights Act dealing with accommodations, stretching to the point of discriminating with one corridor getting something. This has nothing to do with education, to eliminate librarians and libraries. And I also think that Title VII under the Department of Education, it is violating, and actually this speaks loudly to the Department of Education and that Assistant for Civil Rights and the Department of Justice, who has indicated many things to me that this is getting their attention. It is time for them to act. The mayor is doing all that he can. We're doing all that we can. School is getting ready to start, and do you mean to tell me that these children will enter that school and they will be looking at Shadydale? Where is their library, their librarian, and they have nothing but an empty room, and by the way, the bean bags have been taken out as well, and they will be sitting there. And my understanding is they will not be able to get out of their chair and pull a book, nor will the books be refreshed, nor will they be updated. So, Mayor, I close my remarks simply by indicating that the federal government was on notice of our opposition to the takeover. But now we've gone beyond what I could even understand. And that is, we've gone to a point of denial of learning for our children, denial of lost learning capacity, and denial of reading abilities by not adding over the layer of reading teachers this beautiful thing called a library. I close with these comments. Mary McLeod Bethune had 5 little chairs, and she organized a Bethune-Cookman College for freed slaves. Her statue now stands in Statutory Hall in the United States Congress. Cesar Chavez joined Martin King on ensuring that farm workers had housing, access to education, so that even if those parents were farm workers, those children would have another opportunity to become educated and choose their path. They may be in the fields now, but Cesar Chavez walked because he wanted them to be somewhere else in the years to come. Our children that we're speaking of may come from many different backgrounds, may speak different languages. Their status is not their fault. It is our responsibility as public school supporters, champions of it, and as Congressman Green said, not vouchering our school districts. Public school all the way because it's the equal opportunity platform. And I would just simply say, Mayor, I extend my hand of cooperation. As I said, this book is full of letters that even cite the poor treatment that TEA gave to those people with disabilities. You are right, and we stand with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Congresswoman Lee, Congressman Green, members of City Council. Let me just say that I am HISD. If not for HISD, I would not have been afforded the opportunity for the success I enjoy today. In spite of growing up not speaking English, in spite of coming from a family that had to depend on welfare, the books in my school, the librarians in my school, the teachers in my school helped to broaden my opportunity and my vision and my hopes and dreams for this city and for this county. And that's why I stand here today. But let me say that there is absolutely no parent that doesn't believe in the success of a school district. There's no parent who doesn't want to see a school district succeed. There's no parent that sends their kids to school every day saying, I hope you come home with less knowledge than how you left this morning. HISD is made up of 62% Hispanic Latino children, 22% African American, but 80% economically disadvantaged. We are counting on this school district to change the trajectory of this community. And we believe and we know that education is the answer. But for a state that has a poor record when put in charge of major operations, whether it's the electric grid, whether it's the foster care system, or whether any other major example in which the state has been put in charge, the state has historically failed and received a poor grade in managing those large operations. Doing this with no input from local government, Mayor, Congress members, doing it with no input from local parents, local teachers, or the students. And by the way, I'm proud that I helped to create the HISD Student Congress. No input from our students at a minimum puts HISD on a path to more problems. Community meetings, when the community isn't heard, is nothing more than a lecture. We saw how the state flush with federal cash that created a massive surplus, couldn't even agree on how to do property tax relief on the first place and second tries. And despite all that cash, they somehow forgot to fully fund schools or to start paying teachers a legitimate wage, all the while handing down another underfunded mandate to pay for campus security upgrades. Meanwhile, teachers still must rely on online fundraisers to get supplies for their classrooms. The formula for success isn't complicated. Fund schools so that they don't have to cut critical operations. Pay teachers well so we can attract the best. Involve and communicate with parents, teachers, and local leaders as the ones we have on this dais, so that we can all help with their on-the-ground knowledge and assessment of what works in Houston, Texas. One-size-fits-all solutions will never, ever allow for consensus. Open communication and a focus on improvements is key. Local representatives can contribute to a successful transition and positively impact the future of the district. The priority, we can all agree, is to work toward better student success. And so I encourage those that are in charge to check their egos at the door and understand that there are people here who have been on the ground for years, if not decades. These folks have skin in the game. Utilize these resources to achieve the best outcome. Anybody here an Astros fan? Well, Jim Crane doesn't tell Jose Altuve how to hit a curved ball. Mr. Miles must understand that he has good players on the local roster who are ready to help if he just gives us a chance to help the team win. And I will say again, there's no parent that doesn't want a well-run school district that fosters success for their children. But eliminating libraries as a resource to educators does not work with the hopes and dreams that they have for their children. Mr. Miles, I think it's important that you go back, redo your homework, and rethink your approach. And let me just say briefly in Spanish. Estamos aquí para recordarle al superintendente del Distrito Escolar de Houston que todos los padres aquí quieren lo mejor para el futuro de sus hijos y cada día mandan sus hijos a las escuelas de Houston para que ellos puedan tener un mejor futuro, para que ellos puedan desarrollar sus sueños y tener éxito. Pero cuando el superintendente está quitando bibliotecas como un recurso a los maestros en esas clases, eso no llega a trabajar con los deseos que padres tienen para lo mejor de sus hijos. Entonces estamos aquí unidos para suplicarle al señor Miles que debe de ser su tarea nuevamente, utilizar los líderes que están aquí, trabajar juntos con nosotros, porque nosotros sabemos que trabaja en Houston y necesitamos que él nos escuche para que podamos trabajar para nuestros estudiantes, nuestros hijos y para los padres de esos hijos. Gracias. Thank you, Mayor.
Representing City Council, Councilman Carlos Cisneros.
Thank you. I also wanted to say that I, like many of us here, had children that went all through HISD. I have 3 grandchildren that are HISD students now. And my activism and advocacy led me to be on the school board, where I served for 6 years, 1 year as president. And when I left that, I went back to school to become a certified teacher, and then I taught in HISD. And so it was in that role that I also began to see that the role that a city has in education, it's not just up to the schools, it's up to all of us. And I thought the city could be doing better. And so I really appreciate our education mayor and really allowing, the creation of a new council committee, on childhood and youth. And that's really what has been my focus of my adult life is advocating, is in support of excellence in education, in the really upsetting email that we got today, when the superintendent is talking about, improving the learning and life outcomes of HISD students, I will tell you right now, everyone on this stage is right there already. So let's talk about libraries. Do school libraries really help students succeed? The answer is yes. There is a growing body of research that validates that, showing that if you have a certified librarian working with classroom teachers, student achievement is higher. Research from more than 60 impact studies conducted in 22 states has shown that schools with well-equipped libraries, staffed by a full-time certified librarian, contribute significantly to gains in student learning. High-quality libraries not only help students read more, but it also helps them learn how to use and process information more effectively and to perform better on achievement tests. The positive impact is especially significant for disadvantaged students who may have no access to resources and computers at home. By providing students equal guidance and access to print and digital resources, school librarians help close the gaps between privileged and at-risk students. This research is all documented in very reputable places: the American Library Association, the American Association of School Librarians, the Journal of Library Administration, and Education Week. Librarians are teachers, and they are some of the very best teachers. To be a certified librarian in a Texas public school, you must have at least you need to have a master's degree. You need to have at least 2 years of classroom teaching experience, completed a school librarian certificate program, passed a 5-hour Texas school librarian exam, and met state continuing education requirements. Gone are the days when a library was essentially a warehouse of books. In addition to teaching students and teachers how to navigate information in a digital world, school libraries have now become a place where students go to create and produce. Libraries are no longer grocery stores where students go to pick up ingredients, but kitchens where they have the resources necessary to create a finished product. This is the way to cut. If this is a way to cut on expenses, it is incredibly short-sighted, and it is a blow to students who are already living with the inequities that come with poverty or being a person of color. I want to talk about how this is playing out in one of my communities that I represent, and that's Denver Harbor. There are 4 HISD elementary schools in Denver Harbor: Elliott, Scroggins, Pugh, and Raul Martinez. All 4 schools are now part of Superintendent Miles' new education system, despite the fact that they were all rated A-level schools by the Texas Education Agency, which scores at or exceeding the elementary schools of more affluent parts of the district. It is difficult not to see this for what it is: an attack on communities of color. I want you to know that with less than a month before the start of this school year, 70% of the staff positions at Elliott Elementary School are not filled. That is over 30 staff openings out of about 45 staff positions. So, Superintendent, I would like to know really more about your intentions of improving learning and life outcomes for HISD students as the ones I just identified in Denver Harbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Jeffrey,
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for this space and certainly for all who are present. I think we recognize, and I want to thank the elected officials for recognizing my father, who, the Lord spare, in December will be 96 years old. All right. And we praise God for that. I just want to say this. I've shared with the mayor this is a heavy-handed position. I agree with Congressman Green. We need to advocate to this governor because I think that's where the buck stops. And we need to begin that dialogue. I get it in terms of the superintendent and his position, but as it's been identified by Congresswoman, he was appointed and not elected. Therefore, he does not bear necessarily any responsibility to the community, but to follow the directions of those who hired him. And so I would encourage all of us to be strong in our advocacy as it relates for a good product in public education in the state of Texas, because we need it. This superintendent has talked about wanting to have things set by 2035. We need to know what he means by that and what's involved with those particulars. So I'm encouraging all of our pastors, our elected officials, you're on the front line, but let's not go to sleep on this. Let's be able to continue to push, to advocate. I remember something some years ago, and Dr. King has been mentioned in prior references. Basically, when they were those who were trying to silence him, his response was, no, we're going to keep advocating because sooner or later you got to deal with us. And I think if we would have that kind of determination, I think we can get the result we seek. Thank you for the space.
Thank you. Councilmember Gallegos.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As it was stated, we have to fight in regards to these libraries that are being closed. I'm also a product of HISD. My parents arrived as immigrants back in the 1920s, escaping the revolution in Mexico. I'm the youngest of 7, and we all went to HISD. And here I stand today between the mayor and congressional representatives and county commissioner and city council.
Thank you.
My parents would be proud. But to know that our libraries are being closed, to know that HISD, like it's been stated, the majority in HISD is minority now. 62% is Latino. And what do they fear, Governor? Afraid that we are going to get our hands on books to learn our history? No, we are going to get our hands on books and we will learn our history. We're being told what we can read and what we can't read. And now they want to close our libraries. I, for one, as the only council member here in the city of Houston, as a Latino representing half of the population, I say no. Do not close the libraries. We will learn our history. My dad, as I stated, came to Houston in the 1920s with his family escaping the Mexican Revolution. He told me stories where there were places that he could not go into because it said no Mexicans or dogs allowed. So we know our history, and you will not keep it from us, Governor.
Well done. Pastor Harvey Clemens coming out of the Northeast, where many of these schools are located.
Thank you, Mayor, Congresspersons, Commissioner, and to all of my brother and sister clergy. I did not know young Calvin Jr. I just met him. He saw a name tag on the floor, picked it up, gave it to me, and I gave it to the person whose name it was. But it speaks to the conscientiousness of our young people who see a need and speaks to that need. I've made a friend. What we're talking about here, and thank you, Mayor. Thank you for not sitting back, but thank you for your leadership in this matter. What we are talking about here is about this young man.
Yes, sir.
It's about him. It's about his future. I grew up in Fifth Ward, a product of public school districts. Attended Atherton Elementary, where Barbara Jordan went to school. Public school districts turned her out. The late Congressperson Mickey Leland went to Atherton Elementary. The late L. Franco Lee went to Atherton Elementary. It was in public schools where we attended libraries that allowed us to go places that we could not afford to go. The thing about books allow you to travel to far countries that your parents cannot afford to send you to.
Yes, sir.
They allow you to hear from people that in many occasions that your life will not bring you in contact with. Perhaps maybe this is not a debacle on the part of the superintendent or even the governor. Maybe this is a calculated effort to join in with what is happening in Florida and in other parts of our country, to try to rewrite our history, or at least to keep us from knowing our history. Mayor, I thank you for the opportunity to share this. I don't know what my comments will do, but I do remember hearing somewhere that when our brothers and sisters came over on slave ships, the reason why they didn't call us by our given name in Africa and gave us a new name is because they did not want us to know our legacy, our history, and from where we came and who we are. Because they knew that if they could cut us off from our ancestors, they could try to re-indoctrinate us to their own thoughts and ideas. Nothing has changed. The fight that Martin Luther King and his partners and colleagues were fighting then is the same fight that we're fighting now. And I invite all of my brothers and sisters, white, black, Hispanic, Jews, or Gentiles, to join us in this effort to rid our city and our country of this great poison of hatred and racism. I love you, my brother. I wish I could vote for you mayor again, but instead I'll vote for someone else
Thank you.
by the name of Sheila Jackson Lee.
That's okay. Pastor Mia Wright, the pastor of Fountain of Praise.
Thank you, Mayor, to my congressman, and to all of our esteemed clergy and council members that are here. I'm actually Dr. Mia Wright. I have an earned doctorate in education. And so as you would know, education is very important to me. As a little girl in East Austin, where I grew up, the library was an important part of my learning and my education. And today it remains a fact, even with my two sons who have been educated in HISD, and my 8-year-old granddaughter and other grandchildren that are students right now in school. The library is a very critical part of their education. I was recently at a funeral for one of my friends, Dr. Kimberly Agnew Borders, her mother, Mrs. Betty Agnew, who was a long-term librarian in HISD. And there were adults who stood up to give accolades to Mrs. Agnew, who was their school library. Then they were followed by teachers who were educators, her colleagues in the elementary school in which she was a librarian, to share how impactful her influence was with helping them to educate students in times where they didn't know what to do. How can we help our students? The access to the librarian was necessary. I think it's safe to say that we probably all agree, everyone on this stage, I'm certain, agree that we're in trouble. We're in trouble if we take away library space. We're in trouble in 2023 if we remove librarians. And to know that to change the space from an educational space by which, as Pastor Clemens has said, students can learn, they can explore, they can live vicariously through someone else's experiences and through those books. They can access places that they could have never, ever known of. But we remove it to normalize bad behavior, place detention centers in that space, and not even allow those students even further access. What will we do? We're united on this to speak more than just words that are coming from a stage or a microphone or camera. I think we're united for advocacy. It's necessary for our children. It's necessary for our future. It's necessary for us as a people and a nation. This doesn't just damage one community, it damages all. So let's unite. Let's unite, just as the call has gone forth, from every ethnic background, every financial or economic background, every educational background, to unite to see our children succeed. They succeed by learning. They succeed by access. Let's unite to make a stand to say, this is not right, and let's change it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few more, and we'll wrap it up. Pastor Miller, head of the Houston Baptist Ministers Association of the Senate.
To our mayor and to all of our political leaders, let me do this first and foremost. All of the ministers, just kind of raise your hand so they'll know we're here.
Amen.
All right. I want you to know that we are not just sitting around, but we're standing. Let me see the hands of those that a library helped you. I think we're still using libraries. How many of us could raise our hands and said disciplinary centers helped us learn education? When the words of a wise brother, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance.
Come on now.
These libraries are needed. The first book that I learned to read from cover to cover was checked out in the library. It made such an impact that at 61 years old, I still remember Ken 2. Ken 2 with Katumba's son that had been lost. Talked about a rich history that I believe this superintendent and governor is trying to erase. It is an indirect movement now turned into a direct cause that since we fought for you not to rewrite books of truth, to place in it what you want, now you decide to tear down where reading is done. It is an indirect movement of an intentional educational genocide with a lot of skullduggery in the mix. we're not marching now, but we're surely standing. Because if we don't stand now, I wonder who's next. I heard them talk about changing names. Well, that's Bible. Because in the book of Daniel, they changed some names. They attempted to change the diet. They even changed their language. But there's one thing they could not change. They could not change their voices that talked about a faith that a God that knows everything. Can I go ahead and say this to us? You need to change the movement because we serve a God that sits higher than any governor and looks lower than any devil. We are asking you to do the right thing. Don't call out things that you know is not true, but work with us because they are our children.
Right.
And a tree that is planted today is not for us.
Right.
It's for those that are behind us.
That's right.
Libraries have always been important, and they did not stop being important when you showed up. I close with this story that I love to tell. Many of us know about these pants that they call knickerbockers. Knickerbockers are pants that come to the knee. And there was a man that had some long pants, that the pants were too long. He asked his wife to hem them up. She was too busy. He asked his daughter, who had just taken home economics, to hem them up. She said, Dad, I'll get to it. They had a servant there at the house, and they asked her to sew the pants, hem them up a little bit. She said, I'll get to it. 2 weeks later, the mother found some time, and she hemmed up the pants. A couple of days later, the daughter did not know the mom had hemmed up the pants. She went and she hemmed up the pants. The servant had been on vacation. When she came, she had no knowledge. The mom and the daughter, she hemmed up the pants. But when he went to put his long pants on Sunday morning, he was in knickerbockers and Bermuda shorts. All we're trying to tell you is leave us in our long pants. Don't take us back to knickerbockers because you'll have a fight on your hand. May God bless you.
Thank you. Just a couple of more and we'll be done. Pastor Byron Stevenson, representing Houston Metropolitan Ministers Association. Representing Pastor S.J. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all of our national, state, local leaders. I stand on behalf of Houston Metropolitan Baptist Ministers Conference. Our president, Dr. S.J. Gilbert, the second is when he was not able to be here, but I want to speak for him and speak for the thousands of pastors that we govern, pastors who have parents, have students, and have educators within their churches. I don't think that as a pastor myself, amongst some other clergy, that I have to explain the significance of a library to. I think we all understand that, but I want to say in short that we support you, Mayor, and we stand with you, and we agree with everything that has been said. We do not feel that libraries should be redefined as places of disciplinary centers. We just don't. We don't stand with that, and we speak for all of our constituents, all of our parents, all of our students who cannot speak for themselves. We think that this is a misrepresentation. We think really that this is an act of bullying. Sure. It's an act of bullying. Sure. And we stand with all of our constituents, with you, Mayor, and we're right there with you. And we're not going to let you be bullied. We're not going to let the city of Houston be bullied. And we're here for you. So we don't support anything like this, anything like turning our libraries into disciplinary centers. And you have our support.
Thank you. Justin Robinson. Is Justin here from the Urban League? And I know Mark Jacobs is here, who's also chairman of the board. Justin Robinson with the Urban League.
Mayor, thank you to this distinguished dais of very powerful prayers. We will need some very powerful prayers for the challenges that we are facing here today. I never thought that people of goodwill, people of intellect, elected officials, our clergy, that their voices would not be welcomed, that their voices were not wanting to be heard by those who make decisions that we put in power to help chart our futures, the futures of our communities, the futures of our children. It's disrespectful, it's disingenuous as leaders to not be willing to have difficult discussions. This week, the National Urban League was in town to have difficult discussions, Congress members. We talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion of thought, inclusion of ideas, ways that we can make best practices come together for a stronger economy, for a stronger community, for a stronger city, for a stronger union, for all people. I want to be in a state where all people's voices are heard and respected. And I think this mayor, these Congress people, these clergy have taken this last hour and a half to make sure that we're heard, that we demand to be heard. It's expected, and it should be done. Mark Morial said emphatically that kind of broke my heart because, as the mayor mentioned, people from all over the country are watching Houston. For Mark Morial to come to Houston and say, Governor Abbott, get your hands off of HISD. All the way from New York City. Governor Abbott, listen to the people. Thank you.
It's all right. Thank you. And the final speaker before we take questions, Councilmember County, Mr. Bonds.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly consider it an honor to stand here with other elected officials, community leaders, and these faith leaders. In particular, the faith leaders, because if there's any time that we need to evoke the Spirit of God, it is now. On about a week ago, I was in a community meeting with the superintendent, Mike Miles. His first comment regarded the disparity of reading. Yes. My question to him was, what is the disparity of resources? Yes. Which he did not answer. Right. I am the former education chair of the NAACP, and I serve with Councilmember Cisneros as co-chair. But more importantly, I am a former reading teacher. I know how important the library is, and I can remember even now the excitement of the children when they got the opportunity to go. I certainly understand the plight of teachers. Let's just be very clear here. Some teachers are retiring and resigning because of discipline. But I do know that the superintendent could be a lot more creative and not take away a resource for our children and our librarians. He could get a temporary building. I certainly would like for the students to continue to engage while they are out of the classroom. But I had to really think about it, and I guess it's kind of fitting that I'm getting ready to say this. A library without a librarian is like a pulpit without a preacher. Who is going to teach our children? And I'm going to say in closing to the governor and whoever and whatever forces that are coming to create this, we're going to push back on you like you push back on those children at the Rio Grande. and let you know that we are not going to sleep for this. And certainly the people of Houston, everyone, regardless of where your child is educated, should appreciate an educated child, because that's what impacts our crime. And so certainly I stand with you, Mayor, our education mayor, and all of my colleagues and friends here, to let them know that we will not be woke, and we will do whatever we can to get you to change that decision. Either the decision to change that or the decision to change the superintendent. Because we may get attached to teachers and we may get attached to principals, but we don't get attached to superintendents. And so certainly, I thank you for this, and we're going to evoke the Spirit of God, because this is demonic, and we're going to push back. Thank you so very much, Mayor.
Thank you. You've been very, 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 very patient. But this is an issue that goes directly at our children's educational system. If you have any questions, we'll take those now. And again, I do know the NAACP is also representing Pastor Ogletree. Is also here. So, but we'll take.
If you're with the media and you have questions, we have 2 microphones on this topic only, please.
Why don't you take that? If you take that mic and give it to Pastor. You stay down there, Pastor.
I'm from the ghetto.
Come on.
And I heard some ghetto talk. Our mayor has been challenged.
Yeah.
I mean, hard. So we ghetto folk that's in here, that's behind him, responding to that ghetto talk. Stand up and let the television see you out here. Stand up, you that's with us. Stand up. Mayor, answer him like you answer from the photo. Let him know that we're here behind you.
Thank you. We'll take it. If there are any questions, we'll take them. If not, we good? Yeah. Okay. Let me thank all of you for being present and for lending your voices to today. Thank you very much.